Good morning, everyone. I think we will go ahead and get started. It seems like most of you have arrived. I want to be one of likely many people who over the course of the next several weeks will be welcoming you, but also welcoming your children to the University of Chicago. My name is Nick Siemens. I am the Executive Director and Assistant Dean of Students from the Office of International Affairs. A little bit about the office here momentarily, but I just wanted to take a moment to welcome you from wherever you might be tuning in from. I know that I may have been in contact with some of you as your students, your children navigate obtaining visas, planning travel, and the like. I'm going to introduce the office and the work that we do on behalf of the international students and scholars here at the University of Chicago, as well as just share with you all some important information regarding your student visa status in the U.S. Apologize, I'm not going to touch on safety and security there, but there will be some reminders and some additional information and plenty of time for us at the end to go through Q&A. So the Office of International Affairs is a central office on campus. We provide service to all students in all programs who are here on visas. So if your student is a green card holder or perhaps a US or dual citizen, they may not necessarily need support from the office. But for those of you who have students who are on student visas, either the F1 or J1 student visa, your student, potentially you, as well as parents, will have been in contact with the Office of International Affairs over the course of the summer, from admission, leading up to visa acquisition from a U.S. consulate or embassy abroad. And then, of course, we will be participating in the International Pre-Orientation Program coming up here in a couple of weeks, as well as the Welcome Week orientation coming up just before the start of classes later on in September. Here it is already, September 1st. Like many of you, we are shocked that the summer has flown by as quickly as it has. I know that there have been some concerns just about visa delays with the U.S. consulates and embassies around the world. We're very aware of that. I would suggest if your student is experiencing delay, that you certainly can reach out to me or have your student reach out to me. There is an advisor who is dedicated to international students in the college specifically, and that is Abigail Harris, or Abby Harris, who likely has been in touch with your students as well. A few just quick reminders, and I think that's been listed in the chat here before we proceed, but today's session is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and review it at any point. The link is in the chat where all of the webinars are actually located. Please feel free as we go to use the Q&A function as part of today's Zoom webinar. You can enter questions there. You can certainly chat them in. It's a little easier just to keep track of them via the Q&A function, but keep that in mind. So in addition to providing support for international students at the university, the Office of International Affairs also provides support for employment-based immigration at the university. And so just full disclosure, we are supporting and filing H-1B and green card applications on behalf of employees here at the university as well. So one-stop shop for all things US-based immigration. As I mentioned, the students in the college, your students, will have a dedicated advisor who can provide answers to questions, provide additional support. Always is going to be available, to students if they have, if they need anything. They have questions about international travel, need a reprint of an immigration document, have questions about internships or other related items. Abby Harris and I will definitely chat in by the end of the session today, her contact information as well as mine, so that you'll have that. All right. So one of the things that we often share with students, and I like to take the opportunity when meeting with parents, you are our partners and allies in ensuring that your students, remain obviously aware and informed about specifically in this case, their immigration status in the US and what that means. It is often the case that, there is good, but there's also bad information available online. And we always ask students to connect with us before they make decisions about, taking internships or starting internships, that kind of thing. It's always a good idea for your students, if they have questions about anything, even if they've done some initial research online, that they reach out to us and connect with, in this case, Abby. Thank you, Samuel, for putting in her contact information there. She is available for one-on-one appointments, drop-in appointments throughout the week. Of course, available by telephone and email, as is, as are a number of other staff, here in the office. So the important part for us is that we remain available to students when they have questions, as things come up, because as we all know, starting college, there's a lot to take in, especially in the next, the next month or so as classes begin. But immediately your students are going to hit the ground. They're going to be, attending classes, trying to figure out where they, fit in terms of extracurricular interests or student clubs, potentially thinking already about summer internships, for next summer between years 1 and 2. All of those things, are going to be coming at them all at once. And we at OIA are just one additional resource on top of many available to your students as they navigate their arrival and, start to think about their pathway here at the University of Chicago. So as I mentioned, lots of the work that we do is specific to visa regulation and just, providing information to students as they navigate the options available to them while they're here. Certainly, we talk a lot about internships and working with career advancement, but there are a lot of other programs on campus. Student wellness is, one of those locations, and you may actually be hearing from them at some point. And that includes the health center, student counseling, but also health promotion and wellness. And they have a number of incredible programs that we work with them on, specific to students who are navigating arrival in the United States and in a new or somewhat new culture all at the same time. In addition to some of those programs, we also are providing support to students, again, as they navigate the employment benefits potentially tied to their student visas. Maybe right now, not the topic that is high on the list, but post-graduation employment authorization in the form of most likely optional practical training or OPT for students who are eligible. It would also be that they would communicate with our office for their STEM OPT applications. And then, of course, for any of the students participating in internships, working with our office to ensure that they have authorization for summer internships. Again, questions around travel, visa acquisition. We provide information and support on navigating the US tax system. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of these things a little bit later. So a few quick reminders, and as I mentioned, as parents, we love to partner with you. You are our allies in ensuring that your students, adhere to and pay attention to email notifications that they receive from the university and specifically from the Office of International Affairs. But the first thing that we ask that students do is complete an online check-in within 5 days of arrival in Chicago. And that means that if you arrive in the US, but you're visiting family or friends, in another city, another state, you don't need to worry about this until you get to Chicago. And we will be reminding your students directly that they need to complete this step. That's the first thing. The second thing is maintaining your immigration status, or in this case, the status of your students. Every quarter of the academic year, with exception of summer, they are required to be enrolled full-time. And at the University of Chicago, that typically is in 3 classes per quarter, if not more, at least 3. Every quarter, we're going to be, ensuring that your students are enrolled full-time and, making progress toward their academic goals and the degree that they're studying here at the university. The second thing is that we require that they maintain a valid US address as well as a valid foreign address using the my.uchicago.edu portal. The my.uchicago.edu portal is the students' portal for everything, from enrolling, for the next quarter's class schedule to, reviewing their grades, viewing their bill, paying their bill even, and a number of other things. But one of the more important reminders that I like to share with parents is that, if you move abroad and you would like your student to update that address, they can do that via my.uchicago. And the same for your students, even if they're living, and most of them will be, on campus in student residences, they should be providing their US address. Each year that they change that address, they would want to provide an update. We, of course, remind students that the student visas that they're on are somewhat restrictive in terms of employment opportunities. Students are allowed to work on campus without prior permission, but off-campus employment, typically in the form of an internship, over the summer or potentially during the academic year, is going to require authorization. And that's something that they would work with us, but also career advancement to navigate. Certainly any other changes that, that might pop up, and this, does come up occasionally, if students need to take a leave of absence for a quarter, or maybe, they are pending, a different immigration classification in the US, like a green card. Anytime those changes are made, we ask that students, check in with us and just report that information. The last point here, being perhaps one of the more important, just in terms of the conversation that we're having this morning, and as parents, we definitely remind students to check the expiration date of their documents. I myself, sometimes forget when my passport is expiring, but it is important that your students actually have some awareness about their passport expiration date, the visa sticker expiration date that's placed in their passport by the US Consular Embassy, and then their other immigration documents. And then, of course, every time they travel, and we'll talk about this in just a moment, every time they do leave the US and need to return, typically around the winter break and potentially, other times of the year, they are required to carry their original documents. Again, if there are questions, not only is there information on the International Affairs website, there's an entire section dedicated to traveling, both domestically in the US, but also abroad. And we'll talk a little more about that here momentarily. But if there ever are questions, feel free to review the information on the website or have your student connect with his or her, their advisor. So just to go into travel a little bit more, it is important that students, keep their documents valid. We recommend that after your students, have secured the visa sticker from the US Consular Embassy, that they then keep scanned or photo copies of those important immigration documents in their email or on their personal device, on their drive electronically, etc. It's easier to replace lost documents with photocopies, that can be pulled up, on a device much easier than it is if you don't have those documents. So in order to travel over the course of your students' time here at the University of Chicago, every time they depart the US and re-enter, they will be asked to clear passport or customs control in the same way that we all do anytime we pass an international border. That means presenting a valid passport. And like most countries around the world, the US does require that the passport at the time of arrival has validity at least 6 months into the future, as well as the valid F1 or J1 visa stamp. It may be that some of your students have valid tourist visas, either the B1 or B2 visa in their passport, or are potentially from a country where they qualify for ESTA clearance, the electronic system for travel authorization in the United States. And what we ask over the course of their 4 years here at the University of Chicago is that each and every time they depart and re-enter the United States, they do so using their student visa. Again, either the F1 or J1 visa stamp. And I'll talk a little bit here momentarily just about what happens if that visa sticker expires and how to go about applying for a new one. And then, of course, it's important that students actually have and print and sign and carry with them their immigration document. That's the I-20 for the F1 visa holder or the DS-2019 for the J1 visa holder. You'll notice here we reference travel signatures, and those are signatures that are provided on an annual basis. It's kind of an archaic system in general, but we recommend that students obtain a travel signature every 12 months while they're in their academic program here. And that just makes it a little bit easier when they enter the US, either at Chicago O'Hare International Airport or another international airport in the United States. And then, of course, you see here at the bottom, and this is shared with your students as well, if they do plan or intend to travel in the US, of course, they have to present a valid government-issued ID, which is typically in the form of a passport in order to board an airplane in the US for another city or state. And then final reminder here is just, what I started with, and that is, remind your students to take scanned or electronic copies of their important immigration documents, and also that they should figure out, and we will share this with them as well, find a system that works in order to keep all of this important immigration documentation in one place in its original format. These documents can down the road become very helpful to your students, especially as they navigate transitions from the student visa, the F1 or J1 visa, potentially to an H1B, and on from there, potentially onto a green card, either sponsored by an employer or down the road, as those opportunities come up. So that is the important information just about travel abroad and reentry. And I want to just take a moment to provide some information. We often get the question from students, but also from parents about whether or what happens if the visa sticker that I obtained from the US Consular Embassy expires while I'm at the University of Chicago. Visa stickers are issued by the United States Department of State via one of the US Consular Embassies in countries around the world, in cities around the world. And those stickers typically have an expiration date that may or may not correspond to the length of an academic program at the university. Often visas are issued in reciprocity with the US and the home government. And occasionally those visa stickers will expire while your student is here at the university. That does not mean that they have to immediately leave the country or that they will be in violation in any capacity. That visa sticker is just typically used for entry. it's required to be valid at the time of the next planned entry back into the United States in that classification. Their status, their legal status in the United States is dependent on the validity of their immigration document, either the I-20 for F1 visa holders or the DS-2019 for J-1 visa holders. So long as those documents remain valid and the program end date is in the future, a student can remain in the US legally even if the visa sticker in their passport has expired. So I'd just like to provide that clarification, because we often hear from students that they have traveled, perhaps inconveniently or at great expense, solely because their visa sticker has expired. And as we all know, and as you've all been navigating this summer, the delays for visas at the US Department of State and the US consulates and embassies have been so vast and worldwide that if a student doesn't require immediate travel, based on an expired visa sticker, we don't recommend, just leaving just to do that one thing. It does mean, however, the next time they do depart the US, perhaps to come home for a visit over the winter break, as I mentioned, or over summer at some point, if their visa sticker has expired, the next time they travel abroad, they are required to apply for an updated visa, and it's somewhat similar to the original process. You still have to go through the appointment with the consulate or embassy and apply for the renewed F or J visa sticker. In some locations, in some cities around the world, the US Department of State is waiving in-person appointments in lieu of electronic or just sending in your passport for renewed visa sticker without actually having to appear, which is super helpful. And we hope to see the delays at the US consulates and embassies continue to decrease, as time goes on. So just a couple of quick images here. This is just an example of what the F1, or in this case it's a B1, B2, but they all look the same. This is where the expiration date is going to be listed. And again, that date can pass and your student is okay to remain in the US so long as their I-20 or DS-2019 is valid. On the I-20, this is an example of that document. It was sent to your student electronically. They are required again to print and sign the bottom of this document and present it in its physical form with their passport and visa sticker at the time that they arrive in the United States. If passport and customs control happens at the airport abroad, then this is when they would present these documents. More often than not, this will happen, typically upon arrival here at O'Hare International Airport. And the one thing I will just say about that, the Customs and Border Patrol or protection officers at O'Hare, for example, are aware of the University of Chicago. If they have questions about a student who's arriving, they know how to get in touch with me or anyone on the staff here on the team at the Office of International Affairs. So I just put that out there. I know that it's kind of a stressful experience, especially for students who might be traveling on their own, but just let them know that if they or the Customs and Border Protection officers have questions, typically they will get in touch with us. You'll notice here circled are the program start and program end dates. That program end date is the expiration date of the status document. That date typically is extended after graduation based on the OPT employment benefit. But in any case, just want to highlight the location of those dates. And for any of you with students who are coming to the university on a J1 student visa, this is a sample form of the DS-2019, and this is circled here are the validity dates for this document as well. So every time your student arrives in the US, of course, once they go through passport control, it used to be that US Customs and Border Protection would issue a little white card that they would staple into your passport with a lot of the information that you see on the screen here. Some of you joining us today might recall that, again, old archaic system. A couple of years ago, they updated their system and are now issuing arrival records electronically. You'll see here the website, where your student will be asked to download their arrival record. That includes their record number and the date of arrival, their biographic or demographic information, and then their class of admission. We encourage students to keep a running list screen grab every time they enter the US, collect their arrival record. This is their evidence, documented proof of their arrival. And these I-94 records don't remain available in perpetuity. There typically is a travel digest, but it's just a good habit to incorporate, for students each time they arrive in the US, that they just confirm that they've been issued the correct I-94, that their name and birth date and their classification, all of those things, appear correctly. We, of course, do remind them of this. They have to provide a copy of their I-94 upon their first arrival as part of that check-in process. We want to make sure that their initial arrival is verified to be correct, that they arrived and were entered into the US in valid F or J student visa status, and that there's not a mistake, in any case. If ever there is a mistake on their arrival record, there is a way to go about correcting those errors, that are made, typically on the part of the officers who are receiving or processing their arrival. And so there is a way to go about a correction if ever one is needed. So I've talked a little bit or at length about this. I just want to, follow up just to say, if the visa sticker does expire, that does not mean emergency travel is needed or immediate travel is needed. It just means the next time your student departs the US, they will need to go through the visa renewal process with the US Consulate or Embassy again at that time. Unfortunately, there isn't currently a way to apply for a renewed visa from within the United States. I know there's been advocacy for that to happen just to improve overall processing times, but as is typical of some just bureaucratic processes that may or may not happen anytime soon. So just a reminder, your student will have to apply for a new visa sticker while abroad the next time they do depart. So I'm going to talk now specifically about employment options for your students who are on student visas. I know we've got a question already, and this is often, one of the more asked questions that we receive from students. And you'll notice that I've broken this into two types of employment. The first is employment that happens on campus here at the University of Chicago, and the second will be employment that takes place off campus. Typically, again, for students in the college, that is in the form of an internship over the summer or as they progress through their program, internships at other times of the year. On-campus employment for F or J student visa holders is permitted without prior authorization, so long as your student does not exceed 20 hours per week working. That is while classes are in session. 20 hours is a lot in general, especially if you are, in the quarter system, where our academic quarters are pretty dense and condensed and move quickly. Working 20 hours, on top of studies and extracurriculars, certainly can be a challenge. But the regulation does limit on-campus employment during academic periods to 20 hours or less. During academic breaks, your student can, go beyond that 20 hours. And listings for on-campus positions are available via the University of Chicago general website. I'm just looking for open positions. It is often the case that students will find an on-campus job either at the library or as a research assistant or some other position, and in that way they gain experience that can be beneficial and make a little bit of money on the side as well. If they're unsure that the job they found is truly considered on campus or not, they can always reach out to OIA and we'll be able to provide that clarification for them. So again, on campus is permitted without any prior authorization. Working on campus, on a part-time basis is not going to jeopardize your visa status. And it does come up quite a bit for students. Off-campus employment authorization or off-campus employment opportunities, I should say, typically require permission or authorization either from the Office of International Affairs on behalf of the government agency overseeing the F or J student visa, and occasionally, especially for post-graduation employment authorization in the form of OPT, optional practical training, that benefit is granted by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So one of the things that we always remind students is that as they arrive here and start to consider, whether they, start to think about, internships over the summer and gaining professional experience and all of these things, we recommend that, in their first year, the regulations are very clear that they are not eligible in their first academic year for any off-campus employment, typically. So that is going to be the case, that most of your students will not be eligible for authorization until next summer of 2023. I see here that it says 2022, but it is in fact next summer. And that usually aligns nicely with their academic plans and program. It takes some time to get used to the academic calendar here at the University of Chicago. In fact, that's probably the one noted item that we hear most from international students is just acclimating to the pace of the academics and the rigor of the academics here at the university. And it takes about a year to kind of get used to that, get in the rhythm of, not only study habits, and ensuring that, when and how to register for classes for the next quarter, but how does that all come together in a way that, you're actually meeting or, on track to meet your academic goals here at the university. And part of that, obviously, is working with career advancement to identify internship opportunities off campus, certainly over the summer in between each academic year. And then occasionally it does come up that students do pursue part-time internships during the academic year, but typically much later in their academic program. The one main point to be made here, and one point that we ask you as parents to work with us and remind your students about, is that they should not start working on an internship off campus without first consulting with the Office of International Affairs, and typically not until they've been authorized in the form of one of the employment authorizations I've mentioned. We do work very closely with career advancement. Abby works closely with the team there, and they often hold workshops and information sessions for students who are on student visas as they start to think about off-campus internships and what that all looks like. Of course, as your students get closer to graduation, typically in their fourth year, sometimes not until the winter quarter, that's when we will start to reach out to them to say, hey, we know that you're scheduled to graduate this coming June. Now is a time to start thinking about applying for that OPT benefit, as that can take some time for USCIS to review and approve. We hold workshops, obviously, throughout the year, even if your student is just interested now in attending one of those and learning a little bit more. Okay, so before I actually move on, I just want to address this, to address the question that came up. Thank you for answering the question, or excuse me, for asking the question, do students with F1 visas need CPT or OPT to intern or work off campus. Typically, while they are in their academic program, so over the course of the next 4 years, they will use CPT while they are in their academic program at the university to intern off campus. We typically recommend that OPT be reserved for post-graduation. And what that means is that, it may be that your student graduates from the University of Chicago in 4 years, but they will continue to work with the Office of International Affairs, certainly for at least the first year of OPT after graduation, but potentially for an additional 2 years on top of that, if they are eligible at that time for the STEM OPT extension. And again, we will be holding workshops, and we hold workshops throughout the year for students who are getting close and will be preparing those applications. But to answer the question again, during the academic program, students will use curricular practical training authorization for that internship. Any of our J1 students, the equivalent to CPT or OPT is called academic training, and that is a very similar process. So again, they would work directly with the Office of International Affairs, for that. So great question. Just moving on here with some, final just reminders. The first, obviously, is that we ask students to complete that international student check-in. They will receive information from the Office of International Affairs about how to go about doing that. I certainly will chat in a link to that, process and that form online. It's via our website. It's not something they can do until after they've arrived in the US and they have that I-94 or arrival record. And it does require that they, again, update their US address in My.U Chicago. And if they know their US address already, this is something that they could do even now before they've arrived in the US on their visa. I think most students now will have received their housing assignments and will know the street address and their number, as well as the zip code. And it's just a good idea now to get them in the habit of using the my.uchicago.edu portal and becoming familiar with the different address types that are available there. Certainly the ones that we are most kind of paying attention to are the US address. Physical address is a good one. And then again, it is required that they maintain a permanent foreign address. And typically that is with mom and dad at home. So again, when traveling abroad, especially, autumn quarter is going to come and go very quickly. Maybe not for you all, but certainly for your students. And before they know it, they may be planning international travel over the winter break. That's great. We just ask that they not forget any of their immigration documents. Of course, they're going to need their passport to travel, but one of the other things that they're going to need is, again, that printed I-20 or DS-2019 immigration document, and within their passport, that valid visa sticker. We always just try to take a moment to remind students to think about the difference between their immigration status, the validity of those documents that I mentioned, the I-20 or DS-2019, and their visa stamp or the sticker that's placed in their passport by the US consulate or embassy, so that they don't, immediately think that they need to depart the US just because the visa stamp or sticker has expired. And of course, we are happy to meet with them. Abby gets that question quite a bit leading up to breaks. We do pop-up advising, all over campus, for students. If they need travel signatures, they can stop in, they can, submit a request for a travel signature online and one will be sent to them. So it's pretty seamless, in that way. And then of course, just, understanding the difference, between on-campus and off-campus employment opportunities. Another question here, just to specifically address anyone who is holding a Canadian passport or who is a Canadian citizen, you are visa sticker exempt. This does not mean that you do not need to carry the I-20 or DS-2019 and have a valid visa. Those items remain true. It is required that you have a valid passport and that you carry your I-20 or DS-2019. What you do not need is the valid visa stamp or sticker from the consulate or embassy. And this again applies only to someone who holds a full Canadian passport and not necessarily just residency in Canada, because that does occasionally come up as well. So I hope that does clarify the question there. Oops, we went back a little bit. We're going to go forward. I want to just introduce, and because we get this question a lot from parents, but also from students, the difference between a Social Security number in the United States versus an individual tax identification number, which is the ITIN. Most international students arriving in the US on an F or J visa will not be eligible for an SSN until they either have an on-campus job, and sometimes that happens in their first year, or until they secure an internship in their first summer and apply for that CPT or academic training, and only then do they become SSN eligible. Again, this is, kind of a bureaucratic process, but it does get complicated for students because often in the US, you are asked to provide your Social Security number anytime you do anything, open a bank account or sign up for a cell phone, if you're living off campus and you need to connect to city utilities like electricity or water, you might be asked for a Social Security number. All of those things are possible to do without a Social Security number. But of course, it's just one of those moments when, interacting with someone in any of those capacities may not be familiar with the process about how to go about navigating this for someone who doesn't have an SSN. An SSN is required in the US to obtain a driver's license, and occasionally this does come up as well. If you have an international driver's license or your student has an international driver's license, they may be able to use it initially for a finite period of time, depending on the country that issued that driver's license. It usually is anywhere from 3 to 6 months after initial arrival before you are not eligible to continue driving using that valid license and would require, in that case, a state of Illinois driver's license. The unfortunate part to all of that is that if you would like a driver's license, but you're not eligible for a Social Security number, you cannot get an Illinois driver's license until you then are eligible to apply and have a Social Security number. So it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg issue here, but just something that that we certainly want to mention. The individual tax identification number typically only comes up if the student is receiving a scholarship or a monetary award from the university or from an outside, from an outside funding agency. Those students will be notified that they need to go through the process of applying for an ITIN, and there is some information about how to do that via our website at the Office of International Affairs. More often than not, they will apply for that ITIN at the time that they file for a tax return in the next calendar year. Just to mention that we do provide international students with access to software, tax preparation software that is specifically designed for international students to navigate this kind of complicated process. Students who did not work in the US, many of your students, in February or March of 2023 will get an email from us to say, you arrived in the US, in September of 2022. Even if you did not work over the course of the autumn quarter, you are required to file a form with the Internal Revenue Service, basically that just conveys that you are not someone who had earned income in the US and thus did not need to pay taxes. Again, that software kind of guides students through that process. It's fairly painless, but we do work closely with other offices on campus to host workshops that are specific to tax filing in the US because it is complicated. So with that, I just want to provide a few additional reminders. I know that we're quickly running out of time. And again, if you do have questions, we will definitely get to all of the questions here at the end. But a few final reminders here. Again, working with you as parents, conveying to students the importance of their immigration documents, those I-20s and DS-2019s. I've seen it all. They've gone through the laundry. They've had coffee spilled on them. All of those things. Those documents can be replaced. We can provide students with updated documents. But we do just ask that they find ways to keep their immigration documents safe. Try to avoid losing them. The nice thing about being in Chicago is that if a student loses his or her passport while they are here, they can always connect with their country's consulate. There are many consulates that are here in Chicago with representation for countries from around the world. And often the consulate can be very helpful in replacing a passport or travel document, something like that. The OIA website is a good source of information, and I will certainly provide a chat as we wrap up. Provide a link in the chat, to our website, but also to our newsletter subscription links. So if you as parents are interested in receiving a newsletter that goes specifically to students from the office, you can always subscribe to that and get that information as well. One of the more important items, and we spend a lot of time talking during orientation about scams. I think it is probably similar around the world that there are a number of scams that seem to become more and more sophisticated. Students report receiving phone calls that appear via caller ID to be from a government official or from the Social Security Administration. Sometimes even someone appearing to be from their home government. And I think the important thing that we convey to students here is that no one will ever call you and tell you that you owe them money in exchange for either personal safety, the safety of family or friends abroad. Certainly will never be the case that they would call and indicate that you're in violation of a visa status or your Social Security status, et cetera. We tell students, and we would ask you as parents, to remind your students, these scams are sophisticated. They can appear very legitimate. You will never be asked to pay to take an internship or to do, just routine things over the course of your time here. And if you feel like something sounds a little suspicious, you should always end the call or hang up, block the number, and just know that no government official, will ever call you. And you can always call OIA to say, hey, look, I just got this phone call from someone who said they were from this agency and told me I needed to pay a fine, of whatever, however many US dollars. But this does happen, and unfortunately, it happens and continues to happen because people, of course, provide money. So, which is unfortunate. Of course, for you as parents, but also for your students over the course of the month of September leading up to orientation and the start of classes, you're going to be hearing from a lot of different offices similar to the Office of International Affairs. There are a number of supportive resources and offices on campus that are dedicated to supporting your student through their academic program here at the University of Chicago, and who work to make that experience positive, but also enjoyable. And again, that work to ensure that your students are actually getting certainly a good education, but also having the opportunity to form, what it is that they're interested in and where they'd like to go, even beyond their studies here at the university. Just a few additional items here. Of course, we remain open. We are available both in person and virtually. More often than not, students now after the pandemic are far more interested in, rolling out of bed and opening their laptop and asking questions than they are, getting dressed and coming over to the office, which is totally fine. We're available both ways. We do have social media presence. And then, as I said, ongoing newsletters throughout the year with reminders and other updates to students that you, of course, as parents can subscribe to. And then I would just also mention International House. Our colleagues at International House have a fantastic newsletter on upcoming programs and opportunities that can be of interest to students that are more social programs, that span all sorts of different topics. And of course, just reaching out to OIA if you have questions or concerns. Certainly you as parents, are welcome to reach out to us as well if you have general questions, but certainly your students as well. So with that, I see here one additional question. So are internships a good opportunity to explore different career paths? Yes, I think that, what is now very apparent is that, an academic program like, the AB at the University of Chicago and the college is further complemented by practical experience, via professional internships. And my colleagues, and you will likely hear from them or meet them at some point from the Office of Career Advancement, do an absolutely tremendous job at supporting students, as they think about, what direction they want to go professionally. They host career fairs on campus where they bring employers, and they typically do that by industry. So if your student is potentially interested in nonprofit or investment banking or consulting, it could be other industries, art or engineering, et cetera. They're going to be able to plug them in to opportunities based on their interests and provide that advisement, as your students, really start to think about which direction they want to go. So absolutely a great opportunity to explore different career paths through internships. And again, the Office of Career Advancement here on campus is just, stellar at, supporting students through that process. So certainly they will have access to, again, that office and many others as they consider where they want to go and what they want to do. So with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing, and I'm going to pull up just a few quick web links. The first that I will chat in is the subscription link for the OIA newsletters. The second is just the link to our general webpage. And from there you find, all sorts of different information, again, pertaining to both student, but also to employee and scholar, information, then important, updates, and news information specific to COVID-19, travel updates, and other types of things. And with that, I will just once again, thank you for joining me today. I wish you all a pleasant weekend, and certainly, as you prepare to either send or bring your student to the University of Chicago, wish you well as you navigate that process, and just want you to know that we're excited, certainly to meet your students, but also to meet you if you happen to come to campus. And look forward to working with you over the course of the next 4 years that you are, or that your students are with us. And with that, I will say thank you again and have a great day. Thank you, Samuel. And again, the webinar link will be shared on the college website as indicated. Have a good day.